Good evening, everybody. Cindy and Josh here.
Good afternoon.
Coming from you from a galaxy far, far away. It's like my favorite poster. I love it. It's so weird. But yeah, anyway. How are you guys doing? We're good. We had we came live last week from a 3-day trip
to a cabin in the woods
for our anniversary, and it was amazing and beautiful, but our live was not the best.
The audio was off a little bit.
Yeah.
And you guys were all gracious enough not to say anything.
So we appreciate it. We're
We're
sorry.
getting better. Went out and got ourselves a microphone.
We did. We're
going
to up our game as we go forward here. So just know that, like the microphone, of course, we can't get it hooked up to my phone. Well, anyway, we don't need to get into all those intricacies. But just so you know, we're sorry about the audio from last week, but I think it was still good and interesting. So today,
big one.
I feel like, okay, I'm a little nervous, okay? I don't know why I'm so nervous, because I feel like it's important, and I don't feel like we're going to like overshare or we're going to scare anybody away, but I'm still nervous because we are going to talk a little bit about intimacy.
Well, like you said yesterday, it's like, this is probably one of the bigger ones. You know, we have God, you know, Christ-centered marriage, we have intimacy, and then communication, because communication is part of intimacy, as we'll get into, so it's a big deal. And
so just a heads up, this video could be a little bit longer than usual. Usually we try to keep it between 10 and 15 minutes, but we sit down about our topics, and we discuss, and we pray about it and whatnot. And when we were talking about it the last time, I was like, there's a lot to discuss with this. So we might run a little bit longer, so bear with us. We still think it's interesting and helpful. So, I'm just going to get going, even though I'm nervous. That's crazy. Okay. So we're going to talk about intimacy and what that all entails and how it affects your marriage and whatnot. And, I wanted to start off by telling everybody about the 5 love languages. And if you haven't heard of that, I highly suggest you get the book, and you can find free tests online that are really easy to take to figure out what your love language is. And there's 5 of them, and one of them, which is the one I'm kind of referring to now, is physical touch. People who your love language is physical. A lot of people have the love language of physical touch. And so that was one thing I found out several years ago, probably 10 years ago or something, when I first read the book. And it made sense that his was physical touch. And our marriage is going so well. Our marriage has always gone really well. And so I figured, okay, this is something we're doing well. I'm talking to him in his love language, but it would be hard if I wasn't. So
yeah, and vice versa too. So.
Yeah. I don't even know what my love language is anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, so where am I going with that? The 5 love languages, and physical touch is a form of intimacy.
Yeah.
And how?
Well, why don't you tell them what the definition of intimacy is? Because it's broader than we think. We chose the word intimacy because we're thinking, okay, what are some things that are important in marriage? What are the 2 things you fight about, right? It's money and sex. Well, sex and let's PG it down a little, maybe call it intimacy. But it was good to think of that, because in reality, intimacy is much broader than just the physical aspect of it, the sexual aspect of it. And you wrote down the definition.
I did. I actually wrote down the verb of intimacy, which is to share together.
Yeah.
And I really liked that, because being intimate isn't just about sex, like you just said. So we're going to touch base on a couple different things that intimacy is and how it can affect your marriage and whatnot. And it's really important to know that intimacy is all about creating bonds with each other. And it's sharing different things together. And so sex is a big component of that, though. It really is. And so we need to value what the other person's love language is, and in that, being intimate is so important with each other.
Well, and as she said, it's a verb to share together, and that's basically the definition of what marriage is. Marriage is intimacy, because you have 2 people that have decided to spend the rest of their lives together and share everything. And share everything on a level that is far greater than you share with anybody else. Yeah. And so that's why it goes beyond just the bedroom aspect of it, because you're sharing shared experiences. I mean, I can think of some of the most intimate moments that we've shared revolved around childbirth. When we had home births with our children, and it was just me, and it was just her and the midwife, and you're going through such a life-altering experience, and it was extremely intimate, and it made it very special for us too. And so yeah.
True. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it drew us closer together.
Very much so.
It's something I didn't, and not to negate anybody who didn't have that exact thing,
no,
but
everybody
has different experiences around
yeah.
home. We had one very traumatic birth experience, and even that, because we shared it together, drew us closer together. So even those not so beautiful moments will draw you closer together. But that was a good one. So sharing those moments. What, I know you had some scriptures set aside.
Yeah, and I mean it had a lot to do with, realistically how when we share our lives together, one of the things that happens is we can have a tendency to become familiar with one another. And to borrow a saying from the military that I picked up is that familiarity sometimes leads to complacency, and complacency kills. You can imagine in a combat situation or whatever how that is, but it's the same for marriage. Complacency in marriage will kill your marriage, because you start to take for granted your spouse. You start to take for granted that they love you. You take for granted they're going to be there every day that you wake up and you come home from work, and so forth and so on. And so you start to become complacent in expressing the things that they need in order to maintain a healthy relationship, and it will kill your marriage. And I was reminded of Ephesians 5, and so I want to read it for you all real quick. In Ephesians 5:28, it says, "Husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, and the two shall be joined to his wife, and the two become one flesh." And so, this idea of we take care of ourselves, right? We bathe hopefully on a daily basis, right? We put deodorant on, we feed ourselves, we nourish ourselves, and we do that for ourselves because we want to take care of ourselves. Well, we treat our spouse the same way. We treat them, cherish them, and nourish them. And so that means a daily, consistent, habitual, purposeful act of making sure that they're getting what they need on that intimate and love language, love and respect, all of those things that we've touched on over the time. And so it's important. Again, we don't want to become complacent in our love for one another.
Yeah. I feel like we always at some point will forget to place value and tell our spouse that we appreciate them. A few weeks ago I had said, if you come to our house, we say thank you a lot. And we also say I love you a lot, because we don't ever want to we always want to show that we value the other person. And so you have to continually remind yourself, it's not really their obligation to take care of you. It is in a way, but the reality is, and I said this a few weeks ago, you don't have to come home after work every day. You should. That's what's it's what I expect of you. But the reality is that we can all make really bad choices. Yeah. And so I appreciate
you can neglect.
You can neglect each other. So I appreciate you, and I tell you that I appreciate you making good choices.
So we tell our kids, please make good choices.
Please make good choices. Yeah. And so every day you have the choice to show your spouse that you appreciate them and you value them. And these are all moments of intimacy and stuff. I hope you don't mind me sharing this. I don't think it's embarrassing or anything, but every morning when Josh leaves for work, he kisses me goodbye. I'm dead asleep. I'm serious. Dead asleep.
And I could tell how asleep she is by her response, right?
Right.
And so when I get home, she'll be like, I didn't remember you saying goodbye.
Yeah.
It's that's because you were out. Most of the time she does remember.
I know, but I used to be mad. I'm you didn't tell me goodbye this morning. And he's like, yeah, I did. Yeah. You were out. But it like, so now I kind of consciously wake up so I can like give him a hug and a value, like just embrace that kiss and that goodbye every single morning. And it is a form of intimacy that we share together, and I love it. It means so much to me every time you do that, every single day. So thank you for that. One of the other things we really, that's where I was going with that. All these things that we do, I know sometimes when we're not valued, we have the tendency to be spiteful in return, and maybe not like pretend that we don't value the other person as much, or withhold things. Like, I mean, if your husband or spouse doesn't put laundry in the laundry basket, I'm just not going to do their laundry. You know, you hear these things a lot, and I see it a lot in Facebook groups too. Someone will complain about their spouse. The automatic reaction is to be spiteful in return to teach them a lesson. And
that's being the bigger person.
Yeah. And I kind of want to like put it forth to you guys to not do that. I mean, nobody on my friends list would do that because you guys are all amazing. But be careful in those moments of being spiteful. Instead, like, heap kindness upon your spouse.
And go back to one of our last videos. Just communicate. Be gracious. Be like, hey, look. And she does it with me. You know, look, I'd really appreciate it if you would make that extra step to do this. Again, because unspoken expectations are rarely met expectations, and so it's only going to help continue to keep things strong. So
yeah, and I think when we've had those moments, and he's like, okay, I can do better, and I'm happy to help. There are other times where we've been like, I can't do that. Like, there have been things you've asked of me, and I'm like, I know that bothers you, but I can't do that right now. I don't have the time. I can't function under those circumstances, whatever it is. And then hopefully the spouse is like, okay, like
it's unrealistic expectations, and I need to readjust my expectations. And that's important, because again, it's, even though we share this life together, even though we're intimate in it, I go off to work every day, and you do things. It wasn't until probably later in our marriage that I really began to appreciate those things and understand, oh yeah, all these things I'm thinking that she should be doing when I'm gone are unrealistic. But I wouldn't have known unless she had communicated those to me. So, or
I wouldn't have like left for, a day at a time and made you deal with it all on
multiple
your
own. Days. Come back.
Please don't do that again. Yeah. And so I wanted to like go a little step further on this idea of like being spiteful. Don't withhold intimacy from your partner, whatever that form is, because you are trying to teach them a lesson, or you're angry or whatnot. You need to communicate instead. And I'm probably specifically talking about sex right now. I think that's another thing that people do, is withhold that physical touch, that
as a punishment or a bargaining tool.
Yeah.
I mean, God didn't give us that form of intimacy to use it in such a way. So, I mean, I'm going to be frank with you. You know, if you're using sex for something like that, I mean, you're prostituting yourself, because you're saying my worth, my intimacy, what I can provide for you is worth exchanging it for this. You're exchanging it for whatever it is at the moment, and you don't want to do that. That doesn't belong in the marriage. Just like for men should not objectify a woman in regards to the bedroom. You know, we have such an inundation in our world, in our society, that women are objectified, and a lot of that comes through pornography and other means of media and so forth. How again is a man loving his wife as himself if he's objectifying her? And so those things do not belong in the marriage. And unfortunately, I've even heard of counselors suggesting, oh, well, if you're having trouble with your sex life, maybe you should introduce pornography. I'm like, whoa, what? It's like throwing gasoline on a fire at this point, right? Because you're getting away from what the whole point of the marriage is, and that is to have a mutual respect and a mutual love for one another. And you know, if you're having those issues, maybe, and a counselor says that to you, like, okay, bye, just leave right there. So
yeah,
yeah,
I know, and like along with that, like, you know, it's a mutual. It should be a mutual thing, right?
Yeah.
Nobody should be forcing someone else to do something that they don't want to do. It's supposed to be mutually enjoyable. So there's, you know, there's other things at play here, but we want to like really touch base on. Men should not be objectifying their wives, and women should not be withholding any kind of love, any kind of intimacy as a form of punishment or a tool. So there's obviously going to be times where, you know, you have a headache or something. Have you ever watched Dude Dad? So funny. I have a headache. I have a headache. Anyway, you'll have to watch that later. So there, it is important. And we wanted to like, what other forms of intimacy are there? Just,
you know, you mentioned physical touch, right? You know, physical touch sometimes is just a no.
Oh, okay.
That's not nice. No.
That's what Olive does.
I know, but she's 4.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, when you're angry at someone, you know, one of the things you'll do is keep your distance, right? You know, it is a yeah. But you know, if someone's love language is physical touch, you know, it's important to understand that it means a lot more to them, and so you have to just be careful on how you navigate that. And I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah.
But,
that's okay. But if you're angry at someone, you should resolve the anger. Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna give you any kind of physical intimacy while I'm angry
and then
at you.
Open up the communication, right?
Yeah.
So, but you know, just showing love in a certain way, and you know, she walks by, just grab her butt, something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, I was gonna say, like, one of the
inappropriate situations, right?
Inappropriate, we do it in front of our kids. We touch each other's butts and hugs and even kiss and stuff like that.
I mean, there's another aspect, without hopefully making this too much longer, that's important with intimacy is okay, now our children are involved, obviously to a very limited degree, but what better way to teach your child how to properly love their spouse and show love and show that bond of a healthy and wonderful relationship than, you know, hugging and kissing, and you know, I don't try and
we're not being over the top or anything like that.
Like, our kids know that we love each other,
mm-hmm.
and it's because we don't withhold our signs of affection for one another in front of our kids.
Super true.
Yeah.
So like one of the things I was gonna say is like intimacy can be other things, right, besides just physical touch and stuff, but it can be shared experiences. So one of the things I was thinking was doing things together is super important. Mm-hmm. So we kind of like we trade off our anniversary every year, and like that's something we do every year, and only for the past 3 years.
Which means planning.
Yeah. So he plans 1 year, I plan another, he plans 1 year. Anyway, those shared, that's another thing we do by ourselves that just brings us closer together because we have that time to ourselves, and it's so important to find something to do together, whether it's a date night every other week, maybe even once a month if that's all you can pull off, and try different things. I mean, when we were first married, I went snowmobiling, you know, and I'm like, not my jam. Really, I hate the snow. I even bought a snowboard because I thought I would go snowboarding with him because I loved him that much. Not my jam, once again. But try different things. Even if you hate it, it's still like a memory. Sometimes the best memories are the ones where you're like, oh yeah, I ran into 2 trees on that snowmobile. $300 later, it's a funny story. So you don't turn down opportunities to do something that your spouse wants to do and has asked you to do with them, because it bonds you.
Yes.
You know, we bond with our girlfriends when we go away for the weekend. We bond with our friends when we go out to dinner and stuff. Like, do that with your spouse. Do those fun things with your spouse too.
Yeah.
Do a paint night, go shooting. Like, you know, he likes different things than I do. And so I think for the most part, we're both willing to try different things. Although this past weekend, I really wanted to go axe throwing, and he was like, I was kind of disappointed, but we will discuss that later.
All I do is picture this axe bouncing off the target and coming back.
It sounds so
Let's
fun.
not ruin our trip with a trip to the hospital.
So make sure you're doing things together that help create more intimacy. You know, we all love inside jokes and stuff. Make more with your spouse.
Yes.
So another thing, one more thing, sorry. Like I said, I have like this paper. We really, the other part of intimacy is like trust. You know, you have to trust your partner. And part of that is like talking to them and telling them things. I am very honest with Josh. Like, I don't...
Sharing those deep, repressed, whatever it might be, feelings that you would never tell anybody else. You should be able to do that with your spouse because you're sharing life together.
You share the burden of those things, you know? Like I've said this, I've dealt with postpartum depression, and he was one of the first people that I like shared that with. I was like, I think I'm dealing with this. This is what's happening to me. And he was like the one who I talked to.
Yeah.
We should be able to open our hearts and our thoughts to our spouse. And once again, it just creates stronger bonds. It's more intimate moments that ultimately, here's what we're getting to. Here's the ending here. What does it do for us? What does intimacy do for us in our marriage? Makes it stronger.
Much, much stronger.
Right?
Yes.
It makes it more peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it work better, smoother.
Makes it enjoyable.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
We love being around each other. I don't know if you caught on to that, but I'm telling you, we love being around each other.
We spent 4 days, 3 nights away, and every day at work, what do I do at lunchtime?
He calls me.
I call her
every
right?
day.
Even after spending the entire weekend with her, I'm not sick of her.
You know, he called me on Monday, and I was like, aren't you sick of me? He's like, never mind, I'll go. I don't want to talk to you. And I'm like, no. You know, we play with each other. You know, playing is another thing we like to do quite a bit. Joke, yes. And play and be silly. And
but know where the line is.
There's a line.
Know where the buttons are.
Anyway, I think that's it on my part.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good for, we've probably gone long enough.
I know, I don't even know.
Some of you hung in there, and we
appreciate
appreciate that.
We appreciate it. I have no idea, but as time goes forward and we continue to do things, we will get a little bit more in depth with this stuff. We're kind of doing a it does lead to 6 babies, Kelsey. It absolutely does. Yeah, watch out. We will go more in depth and give more information and thoughts and stuff, but we want to give this overall picture to all of our friends. And thanks so much for joining in. Yeah. We like you guys, and we like doing this. Yes, feedback. Tell us what you enjoyed. Tell us what you want to know. Tell us what you didn't enjoy, or maybe like you're like, Cindy, you talked way too much, or whatever. We do love feedback. I would love feedback so we can help you guys, and we can be a better source for you. You know,
we're doing this because we want to help people. And, and so if you need help, reach out too.
Yeah.
So I know this is on Cindy's account, but you can always just say, hey, Josh, my husband wants to ask Josh a question, and I'll do my best. We're not saying here we have all the answers. We're not. We're just trying to share what's been good for us, and hopefully it can be good for other people too. If not, I'm more than happy to point you in a different direction of where you might be able to get help.
We want to be inspiring.
Yeah.
With some solid tips for moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, you guys.